This is the finals of the World Cup of Pokemon, and Landorus T just used the move Psychic, a special attack. Its other main attacking move is Earth Power, another special attack. That's weird. Landorus Therian has a massive attack stat of 145, one of the strongest attack stats of all time. Why was it using a special attack? And this tournament game wasn't an exception. It actually matches overall usage rates too. If you look at Landorus's usage stats in April 2024, its most common move was Earth Power, not Earthquake. Let's look at another Pokemon. Nidoking has a higher physical attack stat than special attack stat, but it almost always uses special attacks. It doesn't happen often, but there are situations where a Pokemon prefers to use its weaker attacking stat. In fact, Nidoking is the stereotypical example of a Pokemon who does that. We're going to talk about all the Pokemon who use their weaker attack stat competitively. Some of these Pokemon and their reasons are going to be pretty obvious, but some of the Pokemon are incredibly nuanced, even for Pokemon experts. In fact, I'll offer you a trade deal. If you make it to the end of the video and there was one you didn't know about, you have to subscribe. But if you really knew all of them, I'll give you a lava cookie. Deal? The first genre of this type of Pokemon are the Sheer Force Pokemon. Nidoqueen, Nidoking, and Landorus I, not Landorus T. Sheer Force gives Pokemon a 1.3 times boost on attacks that have secondary effects. Notably, Earthquake does not get boosted, but Earth Power does. For these Pokemon, despite the lower special attack stat, Earthquake is actually weaker than Earth Power. On top of that, Sheer Force negates the recoil damage from Life Orb too. So a Life Orb Earth Power would have no recoil, unlike a Life Orb Earthquake. It's better in every way. Special attacks are also slightly stronger in base power than their physical counterparts too. Sludge Wave has a higher base power than Poison Jab, Flamethrower is stronger than Fire Punch, etc. Earth Power versus Earthquake is the main factor, but the base power increase on secondary attack negates the lower special attack stat. Nidoking's Sludge Wave is actually just barely stronger than its Poison Jab. Nidoking and Nidoqueen are fundamentally special attacking Pokemon, but they sometimes leverage their attack stat to go and mix things up if they want. Nidoking can use Superpower to hit Blissey or use a move like Sucker Punch to surprise faster Psychic-type Pokemon. It's cool how Nidoking doesn't completely waste that attack stat, but it's still fundamentally a special attacker. Landorus I is a pretty similar case. Landorus Incarnate uses special attacks for all the same reasons, it's simply stronger. But to add insult to injury, its signature move is Sandsear Storm, which is a special attacking ground type move with a secondary effect. The Pokemon Company definitely knew what they were doing when they created that move. But unlike that move, I don't know what the Pokemon Company was thinking when they created Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko illustrates how truly pathetic physical electric type Pokemon are. Tapu Koko has 115 attack and only 95 special attack, but it is definitely a special attacker. Koko's strongest physical electric type move is Wild Charge, which only has a 90 base power and has a negative effect in recoil. Meanwhile, Thunderbolt, the special attacking equivalent, doesn't have any drawback. On top of that, Tapu Koko, despite being a fairy type, does not learn Play Rough, so it doesn't actually have a physical fairy type move. If Tapu Koko wants a fairy type move, it has to use the special attack Dazzling Gleam. Tapu Koko also gets Calm Mind to boost its special attack and doesn't have an attack boosting equivalent. Additionally, it gets good special coverage moves like Grass Knot to hit ground type Pokemon. Again, no physical equivalent to that. Tapu Koko's entire build is built around being a special attacker, except for some reason it has a higher physical attack stat. All things considered, you get more value out of Tapu Koko by using it as a special attacker, plain and simple. The one exception is that there's a meme choice banded Tapu Koko moveset with Wild Charge and Brave Bird, because Brave Bird lets you lure grass type Pokemon like Rillaboom who may try to switch in to get rid of your electric terrain. But this is not a common moveset and is a niche lure option to surprise an opponent. There are way too many issues with the physical moveset, namely Pokemon like Intimidate Landorus Therian, which dominated Generation 8, the last generation that Tapu Koko was available in. And speaking of Landorus Therian, we are going to talk about him right after we talk about one of my favorites, Salamence. You often think of Salamence as a powerful sweeper Pokemon who can Dragon Dance and then destroy a team with a move like Outrage. And that's true. Dragon Dance physical Salamence is a great Pokemon, and that base 135 attack stat is fantastic. But it's actually not how it's used most often. Take a look at Salamence's usage stats for last month in the UU tier. Its movesets are dominated by special attacks, with Dragon Dance only showing up 25% of the time. This trend holds true for most modern generations, not just Generation 9. Dragon is a relatively good defensive typing, and Intimidate is an excellent defensive ability. With Roost, Salamence actually becomes an effective tank Pokemon and not necessarily a sweeper. It can switch into all sorts of attacks in the middle game, roost off damage, and retaliate by throwing off its own powerful attacks. It becomes an integral part of a lot of balance cores like a traditional Fairy Dragon Steel core. Back in Generation 6 UU, a really common defensive core was Salamence, Doublade, and Florges, all working together to synergize both offensively and defensively. But when we're talking about its powerful attacks, its physical attacks are situational. Outrage is phenomenal when you're sweeping a team, but it's pretty bad when you're using it on a more defensive build. You get locked into a move and turned into a liability. If you get locked and removed by a Fairy-type Pokemon, all of a sudden you've lost a key part of your defensive core. Salamence also doesn't get a good physical Flying-type move either. All it has is Dual Wing Beat. Instead, on a tank build, it makes more sense to use Draco Meteor and Hurricane. Salamance's 100 special attack is still respectable, and the high base power of Draco Meteor and Hurricane help offset the relative loss in power. These high power moves make more sense on a hit and run build for Salamence. You tank a hit, you throw off a Draco, and then you switch out. Salamence even gets the powerful Fire Blast to hit Steel-type Pokemon who want to take on Dragon and Flying. Back in the old days, it even got Defog to remove hazards. All playstyles can use an Intimidate tank with great stats and a great typing. Fewer playstyles can make use of a Dragon Dance sweeper. Dragon Dance has the higher peak. It can 6-0 an entire team. But the special attacking Roost variant has the most flexibility, which is why you see it on a lot more teams. And talking about a Pokemon you see on a lot of teams, let's address the elephant, Landorus Therian, who's the most fascinating Pokemon on the list. Actually, maybe not. There's one more who I think is really interesting, Archeops, but we'll get there at the end. Landorus T became a special attacker to adapt to the metagame earlier in Gen 9. This was a big fall from Graze for the King. It was a staple for over a decade with its Stealth Rock Intimidate moveset. You adapt to Lando, Lando doesn't adapt to you. That's how it's always been, but that changed in Gen 9. Great Tusk emerged as the #1 Pokemon with its high defense, good move pool, and access to Rapid Spin. An ordinary Stealth Rock Landorus is pretty ineffective versus Great Tusk. Great Tusk can easily enter the game and Rapid Spin to remove Stealth Rock, or use Ice Spinner to hit Landorus 4 times super effectively. Meanwhile, Landorus T can't do much in return. Great Tusk's defense is too good. That's why Landorus became a special attacker. Earth Power does significantly more damage than Earthquake to Great Tusk and actually makes Great Tusk scared of Lando. Lando goes a step further and uses its coverage moves like Grass Knot or Psychic too. Another reason is Zamazenta, who has high physical defense and uses Iron Defense. Landorus likes to switch into Zamazenta because of its defensive typing and Intimidate, but it can actually lose 1v1 if it has Earthquake. You need Earth Power to do any sort of meaningful damage to Zamazenta, who is one of the tier's top Pokemon. And earlier in 2024, Gouging Fire was dominating the meta and eventually got banned. But one of its main movesets was Breaking Swipe, Dragon Dance, and Morning Sun. Because Breaking Swipe lowers your attack, Gouging Fire actually beats Landorus T despite the type disadvantage. Earth Power would fix that matchup. And the cherry on top is that Glamora is a Pokemon whose ability sets up a Toxic Spike when hit by a physical attack. Earth Power lets you hit through that for a clean 1-hit KO without triggering Toxic Debris. Landorus Therian is an interesting example because it has nothing to do with its fundamentals. Trust me, you want to be using its base 145 attack stat. But it's more about how Landorus adapted to its surroundings in Generation 9. But because it's about adapting to the metagame and not its fundamentals, if the metagame changes, then Landorus can adapt again and move back to physical attacks. And we're actually seeing that happen in real time. Right now, Landorus Earthquake usage is at 70% and Earth Power is only at 30%, which is still a lot. These fluctuations happen in response to the meta. Gouging Fire got banned and that reduced the want for Earth Power, and as a very basic example, if, say, Calm Mind Raging Bolt increases in popularity, so would Earthquake. We're also seeing more offensive Landorus movesets with items like Choice Band, Choice Scarf, or even Soft Sand. Offensive Landorus like Choice Scarf would still go Earthquake, and they have Terra Blast Flying for Great Tusk. Who knows, maybe if you're watching this video in a few months, the meta would have shifted back to special attack. For example, right now, Weezing Galar is picking up in popularity with its defensive Neutralizing Gas moveset. Landorus T would love to switch into Weezing because of its type advantage, but it's incredibly scared of getting burnt by Will-O-Wisp. A special Landorus wouldn't have that fear. We're also seeing a rise in Pecharunt as compared to Slowking Galar, and Earth Power matches up better there too. We can make educated guesses, but it's impossible to predict exactly where the metagame is going to end up. And interestingly, there are a couple other metagame adapters besides Landorus too. One is Arachnid. Arachnid is a sticky web specialist. Its entire goal is to get sticky web up. It's an interesting playstyle. You are willing to give up an entire Pokemon and then back yourself to win a 5 vs 6 with the support of sticky web by stacking your team with slow but powerful attackers. To that end, Arachnid must get sticky web up. If you don't, the whole team doesn't function. So even though Arachnid has a higher attack than special attack, it uses special attacks purely because of Rapid Spin Great Tusk. Great Tusk can live a liquidation but can't live a surf. That alone makes it much more difficult for Great Tusk to attempt rapid spinning versus Arachnid. Nothing else matters besides your ability to get up sticky web. But again, this is not fundamentals, it is purely a response to the metagame, and the meta is a fickle beast. For example, I actually used Liquidation when I was using Arachnid earlier this year in official Smogon tournament, which is the biggest tournament of the year. The reason was that Arachnid was such an obvious lead for a sticky web team, and smart players would anti-lead Arachnid knowing that it uses Surf. A sticky web team is at its most vulnerable when it doesn't have sticky web, and that is true on turn 1. A lot of smart players were leading Ogerpon Water to anti-lead Arachnid. If they could get off a Swords Dance or a Trailblaze or both, they could literally sweep me on turn 1. So as an anti-meta pick, I went back to max attack Arachnid with Liquidation and Leech Life. That way I could target Ogerpon Water's lower physical defense and one-hit KO. Surf is still the most dominant move, but you can be flexible if you know what you're doing. Metagame adapters are not as rigid in what they can and can't do. And speaking of metagame adapters, let's talk about the biggest metagame adapter, Iron Valiant. Iron Valiant is going to kick off a little section here of Pokemon who only have a difference of 5 or 10. They don't really count, but I want to talk about them because it's still interesting to understand why the Pokemon prefers one stat over the other. Iron Valiant has a higher attack than special attack stat, but most often it uses Calm Mind. However, this is purely metagame dependent and both physical and special movesets are good. On one hand, you have Swords Dance Iron Valiant with Close Combat and Knockoff to hit Ghost-type Pokemon, or you have Calm Mind with Moonblast and Shadow Ball. From the usage rates, you can see there's a pretty varied distribution, but it leans towards more special attacking moves, with Moonblast being the most used move. That's because the format has a lot of physically defensive Pokemon like Zamazenta, Great Tusk, Petrarunt, and Intimidate Landorus that makes Calm Mind sweeping just a little bit easier than Swords Dance. In most situations, you pick the right Iron Valiant based on your team and the meta around it. The choices are endless, and with a difference of only 10, all choices are good. In that vein, we have another Pokemon with a small difference in attack and special attack, which is Lucario. But unlike Iron Valiant, the answer is much more clear. Lucario wants to be physical despite its higher special attack. The reason is the quality of attacks available. Close Combat is noticeably stronger than Aura Sphere and more accurate than Focus Blast. That is more valuable than the minor difference in special attack stat. Also, Extreme Speed is a stronger move than Vacuum Wave. Lucario isn't very fast, so when it's going for that late game sweep, the power of your priority move can be the difference between winning a game and barely missing out on a knockout and losing the game. Then there's Azumarill, who technically has a higher special attack stat, but whose ability is Huge Power, which doubles attack, so that doesn't really count, but you get the idea. And then we have Como, who uses its special attack more than its physical attack, but that's because its signature move is a special attack. On top of that, that signature move synergizes well with Throat Spray, which increases your special attack stat. Physical variants of Como are still plenty common. There are ideas like Swords Dance, Belly Drum, even Iron Defense. But when you think of Como, you think about its signature move most often, and that's why its special movesets have the lead. And just like Como, there's another pseudo-legendary dragon type on this list, Dragapult. In particular, Generation 8 Dragapult. Dragapult has a lower special attack than physical attack, but Choice Specs was its most common moveset. The main reason is move pool. Dragapult doesn't have a good physical ghost type move. Its strongest physical ghost move is the 2-turn move Phantom Force, and as a 2-turn move, it isn't very good. Dragon Darts is interesting, but still not incredibly strong. Meanwhile, Shadow Ball or Hex are infinitely more consistent than Phantom Force, and Draco Meteor's high base power helps make up for Dragapult's low special attack. On top of that, all of Dragapult's good coverage moves like Fire Blast or Thunder are special attacks. Choice Specs is the most common, followed by mixed attacking movesets, followed by Dragon Dance or Choice Band. That being said, however, terrestrialization has changed the game and made physical Dragapult a lot better. Now, Dragapult can use Terra Blast Ghost to give itself a strong physical ghost move, or it can use Terra Dragon to make Dragon Darts actually menacing. In Gen 9, physical versus special depends on the context, but in Gen 8, special attacking Dragapult was definitely more common despite its lower special attack. The next genre of Pokemon who use the wrong attack stat is relatively new. It was invented with the introduction of Steel Beam in Generation 8. It enabled a strategy with the Steel-type Sacrifice lead. The goal of a Sacrifice lead is to get hazards up, deny hazards, and then faint. That way you can safely go to your next attacking Pokemon. It's a pretty interesting concept, and I've talked about the strategy in a previous video. To that end, Steel Beam is an excellent move in finding a way to sacrifice yourself. For this variant of lead, making yourself faint is so important, you use a special attacking moveset built around Steel Beam no matter what your attack stat is. Sacrifice Iron Treads uses Steel Beam and Earth Power despite a massive 40 attack stat difference. Sacrifice Excadrill runs Steel Beam too for that same reason, and even Pawniard down in Little Cup can run Steel Beam as well, just for the concept. Sacrifice leads itself aren't as common, but when you do run a Sacrifice lead, you definitely go special. Next up is Alomomola before Generation 9. Alomomola is a purely defensive Pokemon. It is not capable of doing anything offensive, and its main job is to tank different attacks and then use Wish and Regenerator to heal a team. Direct damage output from Alomomola does not matter because it would do so little anyway. Instead, Alomomola focuses on indirect damage. Scald and its chance of burning is infinitely more valuable than any extra damage that Waterfall would get directly. As a result, Alomomola never used its attack stat and instead focused on Scald and Toxic. But that changed in Gen 9 with the introduction of Flip Turn. Flip Turn is a fantastic move on Alomomola because it allows you to maintain momentum by tanking a hit and then using Flip Turn to switch out after the opponent moves. Importantly, it allows you to safely pass your Wish to a different teammate. Alomomola did not go physical for the damage output, but Flip Turn's pivoting ability is more valuable than Scald's secondary effects. Furthermore, Alomomola lost access to Toxic, so a fourth move you sometimes see is actually Scald, or you see Play Rough, which lets you hit Water Absorb Ogerpon. We're about ready to talk about my beloved Archeops, but let's take one last detour to a different flying type, Thundurus in Gen 8 VGC, the winner of the 2022 World Championship. The World Championship took a 2-year tournament hiatus for COVID, and this Worlds was one of the most anticipated VGC events of all time. The winner had a physically attacking Thundurus, and the reason is twofold. One is Defiant. Intimidate from a Pokemon like Incineroar is incredibly common, and Defiant lets you increase your attack and is an effective deterrent to Intimidate as a whole. But also, this was the era of Dynamax, and a Flying Dynamax move increases the speed stat of both your Pokemon, an incredibly valuable effect. But Thundurus only knows one flying type move, Fly. Dynamax Fly is the only way to get a usable flying type move on Thundurus and trigger the valuable Flying Dynamax. If you weren't using Prankster support, it became a no-brainer to go physical despite the lower physical attack. And finally, let's take a look at the Archeops by diving into the lower tiers of PU, where we find Archeops ranked A+ in Generation 8. Archeops is an Achilles heel genre of Pokemon. Everything about it is good except for its crippling ability. Archeops' ability Defeatist means that when its HP goes below 50%, both its attack and special attack get cut in half. It's why Power Herb, Meteor Beam, special attacking Archeops is incredibly popular and is the #1 moveset on Smogon. The idea is that on an offensive team, you use Archeops as a source of powerful burst damage. Archeops' special attack of 112 is still good, and with the power boost of Meteor Beam to your special attack, you become stronger than a physical attacker. Archeops has good secondary moves too, like Air Slash, Earth Power, and Heat Wave. The Flying Stab in particular is pretty nice. Archeops' best physical flying type move is Acrobatics, which is good, but would mean that you go itemless and wouldn't have the benefit of an item. The Gen 8 PU tier in particular happens to have a lot of high physical defense Pokemon too, like Doublade, Sandslash, Weezing, and Regirock, just to name a few. They would easily defeat physical Archeops, but they would struggle with special Archeops. It's important to contextualize Archeops here. Its special attack being reliant on Meteor Beam Power Herb means that it's only going to be using one Rock-type move per game. But Archeops knows that on more offensive teams, because of its ability, one opportunity is all it's going to get anyway before it gets hit below 50%. So it has to make sure to maximize that one opportunity. You end up with a very fast and powerful wall breaker in Meteor Beam Archeops. There is also a physical Archeops moveset too, where Archeops uses Heavy Duty Boots, Stone Edge, and Roost. It fits more unbalanced teams with utility moves like Knock Off and U-Turn. It takes an opposite approach and holds on to its longevity through Heavy Duty Boots and Roost. Which variant you use depends on your team, but both are good, and it's definitely safe to say that Archeops reinvented itself in Gen 8 PU as a special attacking threat. And finally, last but not the least, I want to talk about an honorable mention, one that really doesn't count, but it's way too interesting to not talk about it. And that's Abra using physical attacks in Gen 8 Little Cup. This is a mixed attacker. Abra still fundamentally relied on the move Psychic for most of its damage output, but with the removal of Hidden Power in Gen 8, Abra lost a way to hit the most common defensive Pokemon in Little Cup, that is Ponyard and Ferroseed. Abra is an incredible Pokemon. It's fast, strong, it has a good ability in Magic Guard, but it had absolutely no way of getting past the most common walls in the tier. That is, unless it resorted to physical attacks instead. Abra started using Focus Punch and Fire Punch. Even though Abra's attack stat is terrible, having a 4-time super effective hit was better than nothing. You could actually one-hit KO Ponyard if you predicted it to switch in. These moves allowed you to try and fix your biggest weakness. It's a stunning example of a Pokemon doing what it needs to do to adapt and stay relevant. But again, this is a mixed attacker, so it doesn't truly belong on the list. That wraps up my list of Pokemon who use the wrong attacking stat. Did you know all of them? Let me know down below, and I'll see you guys for the next video.